Is a feeling of belonging solely defined by place or a community? What happens if you find yourself a stranger in a new place with no support system due to circumstances you cannot control? What if your home life is chaotic and you have no one stable you can turn to for guidance or help? Is it possible to create a sense of belonging in such difficult and isolating circumstances? Welcome to Belonging Across Cultures, the podcast that asks, how can we move from difference to connection and build better lives and a better world? This is a Tiger Spirit podcast, and I'm your host, Yang-May Ooi. I'm a cross-cultural advocate and author. Today, I'm talking to Dr. Nafisah Graham-Brown, Deputy CEO of Yes Futures, a charity which empowers young people to believe in themselves and discover their personal potential. Her life has been shaped by movement between cultures and countries and by growing up between identities. She has lived in Malaysia, the UK, and the United States. Her personal journey led Nafisah to explore belonging more deeply through both research and practice. Nafisah's doctoral research examined migrant women's experiences of belonging as they settled into UK society. Her commitment to social justice has shaped her work in ESOL, English for speakers of other languages, as well as in literacy and basic skills education. Social justice is also at the heart of her varied career supporting refugees, migrants, adult learners, and young people to build confidence, independence, and a stronger sense of belonging in their lives. Nafisah Graham-Brown, thank you so much for joining me on the Belonging Across Cultures podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So now you have a very interesting background. Could you tell us something about that and why the theme of belonging is important to you?
Well, so although I was born here in the UK, when I was very young, we went to Malaysia and I spent my schooling years there. My mother's Malaysian. So that was home. I grew up there. And then I came back to the UK to finish my education, to do kind of A-levels. And then there was the experience of feeling that this was where I belonged by virtue of citizenship, but not really actually feel at home because it was all very different. I started my career working in retail and catering. I just took the first job I could. And I really felt very at home there with the people that I'd met. But then after a while, I felt that I was looking for a different purpose and really felt that I could give back in the area of education, working with young people. So then I retrained in education to work with young people in college. I moved to London and kind of a different community of practice as such, because I was then working with teachers and we were working towards professionalization of ourselves and gaining new skills. I ended up working actually in a small charity in East London, working with refugees and migrant women. And it was there really that I started to question kind of, how does it feel to move to and not do it out of choice, to be forced to move or to move because of circumstances that are kind of out of your control and to start again somewhere and actually not have the benefit of knowing the language. And really I felt that the motivation and passion of the people I was working with was so high to try and fit in or to try and find home. But potentially the things that were around them, like the requirements that were made of them to learn the language, and then kind of an external perception that migrants don't want to learn English, which is totally untrue from what I, on the ground could see. That really drew me into this idea of belonging and what does it really mean? And, my research was an attempt to share wider with people what the experience I saw and what the perceptions of the women that I was working with, told me about their experience and about their desire to really be part of this beautiful community and within where they were living in London and wider.
I'm
That's
going
what
to,
brought me here.
Brilliant. I'm going to pause you there because I think
Excuse me.
there's so much there with the migrant women. But also I just want to stay a little bit with your connection with Malaysia, because of course I'm from Malaysia. I love meeting Malaysians in different parts of the world. And it sounds like we had a slightly sort of opposite experience, because I came over 1975 to school here, having been brought up Malaysian. Could you just share a little bit about what your impressions were of Malaysia, coming from the UK at that time as a child?
I was very small, so I just remember, that's where family was. Apparently, I picked up the language really, really quickly because I was only about 4. My parents said, "Oh yeah, we sent you to play with the kids in the village, and you came back speaking Malay."
And do you go back to see relatives on your mum's side? And so now, as an adult, going back to Malaysia, what are your impressions? Comparing it to the UK.
The Malaysia I remember is from 1995, 1997. So, there has been so much progress. I left before they created the transit rail system and all those types of things. And actually going back, everything seems really nice and new. Feels efficient. But I also noticed that working with government departments can be very difficult. Although I can speak Malay kind of, in a family setting with friends, having to navigate the language that's used within business and government is very, very difficult. And there's just been a lot of growth in how people see themselves in the world. And it's really quite beautiful, actually, to kind of meet people who have started initiatives that, we would presume would be something you'd find in America or England, but not in Malaysia. There's so much creativity and innovation. There's also this story of how, every Malaysian is really hardworking and has 3 different projects going on at the same time. And I see that actually with all my friends. Everyone's got something going on and a passion and a side thing.
That really resonates with me, because I did go back to visit my parents and my family, and I had difficulty because I'd been here for so long. I spoke English with this rather sort of posh accent, and if I use that voice, people think, God, she's really up herself. So I kind of try and remember my Malaysian accent lah, and using lah, which is a very Malaysian thing, and
Yep.
and so that it kind of establishes rapport and that sort of thing. I don't have very much Malay or even Chinese, and so trying to navigate all that, if you have to come up against bureaucracy, it's a nightmare. And I feel, well, I mean, it can't be helped because I've spent all my life here, and I'm proficient to navigate bureaucracy here because this particular voice is particularly useful when navigating British bureaucracy. So, you and I, as you touched on, we had choices. We could move countries if we wanted to or not. And so your work with migrant women, could you tell us about your research in terms of belonging in the context of these refugee women in the UK who had to come not of their own volition?
The research followed 6 women in depth. So it was a very kind of qualitative piece of research following their journeys. It really kind of gave very, very rich information about them. The women actually had different experiences. So some were refugees and had that experience of being forced to leave and having to go through the asylum process. Some were women who came here because of family connection, i.e. potentially they got married to someone, but then unfortunately some of them, those marriages didn't work out. So they were here, although we think there was a choice for someone to get married. Well, actually, sometimes the choice isn't as clear. So they'd come over with their partners and needed to figure out what to do for themselves, life for themselves. So there were a variety of stories of the women that I followed, but generally that kind of feeling that they actually hadn't made that decision themselves to move. And then they were now in a place that they had to navigate and figure out. Some women had professional careers in their home countries and then found that actually they had to start again, that their qualifications or experience wasn't considered in the same way. But others hadn't had the benefit of high levels of schooling. Obviously, there were lots of themes that emerged in terms of their experience, their shared experiences of trying to what we call integrate into their communities. I looked at some of the aspects of that process of, gaining access and becoming part of the community and feeling a sense of belonging. And one of the things you mentioned was, your own experience of difficulty navigating bureaucracy, coming from one system and then going to another system. And that in itself can be very tricky, even for someone who's very good at navigating systems. So that's one of the aspects that can help you feel that you belong, is this material aspect of belonging. Where do you have access to, do you feel that you can even enter a space or access an online service? Something as basic as that. There's kind of 4 really main aspects of belonging. A second one was relational. Do they feel that they had people around them that they could talk to, that would be trying to support them? Do they had connections with people in their community to make them feel that they've got someone that they can talk to, someone they can... just imagine, being somewhere where you have no idea who you can, even just say hi to sometimes. And then there are social aspects as well. And one of the main areas that I felt made such a difference is that the cultural aspect of belonging, which does tie in with that material when I was talking to, but it's more about like knowing the rules and the norms of a place, how you're supposed to do certain things. And that can be quite difficult as well, because you may have, the ability to speak a language and be able to do all the kinds of things. But if you don't know how things work, the rules of, how you should do this, or, you shouldn't do it that way, that can also make you feel like you're not really sure of what you're supposed to be doing, sure of yourself.
It just struck me in terms of the social rules, we might pick it up naturally, because I came here when I was little, and it's much easier to adapt when you're a child. You sort of observe how do people do things. Something as simple as people expect you to smile and say thank you or please, or the wonderful one I love is so English. It's sorry. Somebody has bumped into you. You're the quote unquote victim of somebody walking into you. It's a very English thing to say, oh, sorry, even though it's not your fault. And it's those little things, isn't it, that smooth the daily process.
One of the stories that one of the women that I was working with told me was how, when in the very early days at a bus stop, there was queuing situation that she didn't understand, because that just isn't something that she had encountered anywhere else. And someone was really upset with her and kept saying, say sorry. And she didn't understand what was expected of her. And that was it was distressing for her. There wasn't really anyone else there who was kind of stepping in to give her any support. Later, someone explained to her. But those types of things don't exist in an English curriculum. There are some books, when you're learning English, that do talk about manners. But I think that it's more than that. It's kind of it's social convention. It's not that she was being rude. She had no intention of, upsetting other people. It's just that actually it wasn't the same as her own cultural experience. And, actually, I think for her, this was probably the first time she'd been on a public bus. There's so much new going on, and trying to learn everything, as you say, without that opportunity to observe it's very challenging for somebody. But those experiences themselves are really important, because they help a person learn, and then help a person, remember that's how it went, and that, and that's what will help them then form what they know for next time. And that's one of those aspects of belonging, is temporal belonging, where the memories and experience of your past shape your confidence in your present. So it's tied into, I guess, experiences of trauma as well. But on the backside of that, those are the things that you do in the past then actually build your confidence for the present and then for the future. And actually, the value of repetition and routine, which a lot of us maybe don't think about, like how important it is to have those multiple experiences again and again, because then that tells you what might happen next. And that feeling of knowing what might happen next, that predictability actually builds trust. And when you feel trust, you feel ease. And that's the theory of belonging that I use, is that when someone feels at ease with themselves and their surroundings, that's when someone feels that they belong. And it comes from a researcher, Vanessa May, this idea that when someone feels that they're at ease with themselves and their surrounding, that's when they feel belonging.
That is so simple, but also difficult, but also very powerful. And I'm just thinking about my own experience. You go to a new city, you don't know where you are. You arrive at a train station. You're most likely to be mugged because you're standing there looking like an idiot tourist, and you don't know where you're going. You've got your map in the olden days, or you've got your phone out, and that's when you're going to get targeted. And you're unfamiliar. You walk down these streets. You might turn down an alleyway, and this is a dark alleyway, and I might get mugged. I mean, this is a very light example. So imagine being someone who has come to a country not necessarily of their own choice. They don't speak the language. They're already traumatized from whatever it is that they had to move away from. And that escalates that sense of this is scary, this is horrible. You take a bus and you don't know how to say sorry because you didn't realize, and people are being aggressive to you, not because you intend to be difficult, and all that stress must be so awful. But what you're saying is that the more you take the bus, the more you walk down the same street, then you know, okay, I'm going to avoid that alleyway. That was not a good thing. And you don't have to have your phone out. You can navigate the street. So this is why sometimes I like to go back to the same place, like Delft. I can walk around and I feel like a local because I don't need a map to navigate. How do you then, having observed these women, and how then does your research translate to have a practical impact in the work that you have done in the education field?
One of the first things that came up from the research is the importance of ties in supporting someone to feel relational and social aspect of belonging. So, because strong ties matter, obviously, to make you feel that, you have something, you're rooted, you belong. And in an ESOL classroom, we see students really working together and starting to learn about each other and become each other's friends. Certainly, many of the women I talked to, their friends in London or in their area, the majority of them came from their ESOL classes or the school gates.
People who don't know what ESOL is, could you just explain that?
Yeah. That's ESOL for speakers of other languages. So an ESOL class tends to be where many people who move to the UK who haven't got a good master of the language yet or working towards it will come and take classes in either a local college or a community organisation and build up that skill. Many want to do further education, further learning, or have their qualifications like match. So the certificates that they get are very important towards them progressing to a higher level of qualification.
And it's English language and a little bit of cultural stuff. Is that right?
Yeah. So in ESOL, most of the context we use is the context of where people are living. So there'll be cultural information. There'll be kind of cultural context in there. There'll be things that are about, access, how to do important things like set up a bill, for example, for services like gas or electric if you don't already have it, or how to assess what you're paying is what you should be paying, or how to read a payslip, so there's things like that as well. But definitely kind of that social cultural context is very much towards the person's lived experiences, things that they might be needing to support with in their daily lives, or things that will enrich their knowledge about where they are and opportunities for them. But coming back to the impact that, my research has had. So one of the things that a lot of ESOL teachers talk about was how to keep those relationships going out after the class and outside of the class, because we saw the value in the opportunity for our students to practice communicating English with each other, the relationships that they built kind of giving them that confidence and helping them feel that they belong to a group, which is kind of a step towards feeling that they are more comfortable in where they live, and have kind of support around them. And what we found in my research, having a WhatsApp group meant that those connections that they made within class became enduring and sustainable outside of the class, and even further into the future when they were no longer in a class together, they still supported each other through WhatsApp. So one of the things through presentations I've made with kind of people in the community was to encourage the teachers to get students together in a group. And my research ended in the beginning of the pandemic, so it was obviously also very pertinent at the time because everything was online, and encouraging that online communication in a way that was accessible was something that I was able to share with the ESOL community. The other thing actually for teachers was sharing the value of weak ties. So I talked about strong ties where, you can make really close relationships, but actually the research showed me that weak ties, as in, just an example, one of my students would go to a shop and this shopkeeper would be, friendly and talk to, kind of help her practice a little bit of English. It wasn't much, but that experience of going in daily with someone who was a weak tie, i.e. they had no other relationship apart from going in, was actually really important to building that repetition and that sense of predictability. I know I'm going to go to that shop and I'm going to see that same guy smiling and being very kind. And that made them feel that this was a space that they were welcomed in, they belong. Those weak ties accumulated across like a community setting can really help someone feel that this is where they belong.
So that's very, very relatable. And it's something that we, when we live in a particular place, we take for granted. And I recently, in the last few years, moved from London to Oxford. And in this particular neighbourhood where I live, everybody's really friendly. You walk into a shop, you have a little bit of a chit chat, and then you get to know the neighbours. I was in my front garden just digging up my compost or whatever. And people walk past, lovely garden you've got. And you have a little bit of chit chat. I have no idea who they are, but every now and then they pass and they go, oh, hello. And that makes me feel that I belong, because I moved here because of a divorce situation. So I was, quite upset and it was a stressful time. But having, as you call them, weak ties, made me feel, oh, that's nice. And so we take it for granted, but fantastic that, your research helps people who may not be aware of that to kind of naturally, well, sort of consciously, but also naturally build strong and weak ties.
London can be a tough city in terms of friendliness. It's not perceived as a place where everyone's friendly, when they're waiting for the bus or something like that. So any opportunity that you can help your student to feel that they can approach people, and also with my research, I've been able to talk to people about making their spaces more accessible, but not necessarily in a physical way, but just thinking about what they've got on their walls, for example, or processes that they have in place where, for example, if someone turns up, if the first thing they have to do is fill in a form, can really be quite off-putting, scary, or feel, kind of, I'm not part of this, I don't belong here. Going some way to making sure that spaces are welcoming. And that actually helps people with all types of diverse needs. And it's not just specific to one group.
That's brilliant, because then that helps a whole range of different people feel that the UK is their home, that this is where they belong, that they are welcome here, and that then they feel happy and part of the community and part of Britain, which is very, very powerful.
Yes, that exactly. When people think about belonging, they often think about what people are doing to show or to get, to kind of take part. But it can be more subtle than that. And for someone to feel that they belong, it's, being able to be at ease. And then you're ready then to be more active or take part. One of the women I spoke to, she was in a situation where she was a lone parent with one of her children being, having kind of additional needs, and she was alone. It was at the school gate that, she made the kind of effort to talk to people, and it was very scary. But she said once she made one friend, she kind of thought, I could do this again, and I'll make another one. And she ended up having 7 different kind of parent friends. And when her child had an incident that meant that they had to go to hospital, she was able to call on these parent friends to help with her other child. And, that to me, that was really quite amazing that she was able to build that network with all these people and to be able to kind of help each other out, because it wasn't just one way. She then also helped them out. So when people say, what's the contribution? Well, this is it. You become part of that community, helping each other out and supporting each other. At the time, she wasn't working, but she was a lone parent raising her children, trying her best to be involved in their schooling, because that's the next generation of people who are going to be contributing to society through their work, for example. But really, that in itself, I feel, was what she was doing for the whole community and her whole, school neighborhood. She also was encouraged to join the Parents Teachers Association by one of these other parents that she'd befriended. And again, that was something that, she was like, oh no, that's not a place for me. I don't speak English well enough. But they encouraged her just to, go to one meeting And then she thought, oh, actually, maybe I can do this. And she did put herself forward to become part of the Parents Teachers Association and then started volunteering. So one of the things that the research showed is that the belief that you can do something is just as important to that feeling of belonging. We use the term self-efficacy in education quite a lot. Is that feeling that once you've achieved something, you can then try something else because actually you've been able to do this one thing. Once you've spoken to one person and been successful with having good communication with them, or like being friendly back, then it gives you the confidence to try again on something else. And self-efficacy is really, really important. We talk about it with young people a lot, but of course it's important throughout life to build those skills, especially if you're in a new place again and you have to figure out things again. That's something that's come through in my research, that there's a lot of it that's external. Obviously all these aspects I talk about, but the confidence becomes internal. And you then have that skill of being able to belong in different places, the confidence that you can do things in your own life and that belonging is in yourself.
So this is a good opportunity to talk about your work at Yes Futures. So what does Yes Futures do?
So Yes Futures is a charity that helps young people to build that self-belief and sense of belonging and aspirations for the future. We deliver one-to-one personal development coaching and programs of experiential learning that help young people be able to kind of gain these skills. From our research and over 12 years of being around, we've identified that there are 4 really important skills: communication, confidence, self-awareness, and resilience. All these together make that ability to believe in yourself and to be able to have self-efficacy really through the experiences on the program, so that you can feel that you can do anything in the future.
And so who are the students in the Yes Futures coaching program? So do you work with different schools? How does the sort of structure of it work? And how do you bring students into the Yes Futures program? And how does the coaching affect their lives?
We do primarily work with schools, but we are also working with community organizations and other kind of organizations where young people are already with them. We have a project where we're going to be working with some community partners, and that means that we'll be able to reach young people who are very at risk of not being in education or falling out of school. But typically, the students we work with come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. They're put forward by the schools, actually. They identify students who might need a little bit of support, come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. They may have difficult situations at home, or they may just have a lack in kind of self-belief and confidence, and the school thinks this program is going to make that difference. All of them brilliant young people with such great ideas. This is my own experience of working on the programs myself. I feel that we are there to help them with the launching pad because the potential is already innate in these young people. So what we do, we have coaches delivering one-on-one sessions with the young people as part of a really structured program. So it's over a 10-month period, within which in the first 5 months is quite an intensive coaching period. And also with that, we then have these outdoor and industry experiential learning opportunities for the young people. So we go to kind of an outward bound day where they have physical challenges to do with kind of maybe boating or on high ropes or learning archery. But what that really teaches them is to kind of maybe not do something well and then try again and be able to achieve. So that kind of building that efficacy and also resilience to not doing something so well the first time round, and knowing that actually you can just try again and get it better next time.
Can I just go back and just focus on the young people? What sort of age group? Is it girls and boys? Is it the global majority? Is it white young people? What's the mix?
Actually, there's a large mix. We work with young people ranging from 8, still in primary school, all the way up to 18 if they're in sixth form or in colleges. In some of our community projects that might be slightly older if they have special educational needs. It really depends on kind of the areas that we work in. So we've worked in schools where the typical young people are from global majority countries as a background, but obviously they're all here, they're British. But we also work in schools where the mix is slightly different because of where we are. But what really ties all the young people we work with together is that background of coming from low socioeconomic groups, not having opportunities in their, daily lives to do some of the things that we do in the program. Certainly, many don't have a trusted adult outside of the family to have conversations with. I mean, just imagine being in that situation where you have so many questions, you don't know what's happening, what to do. You have to choose your subjects. You're not sure what they should be. And just giving someone, a person that's outside of the systems that they're within, who just goes, hey, I'm here to listen to you. That's what I'm here to do. And you've got the answers and we're going to figure this out together. It's a coaching relationship rather than mentoring or counseling. We're certainly not trying to do anything in that mental health sphere, but it's really an opportunity for a young person to be listened to and then feel that they have some agency in the decisions that they make in their lives and the choices that they make.
And so for people who may not know the difference between coaching, counselling and mentoring, could you just talk a little bit about that?
So coaching assumes a very different power relation. You're on a journey side by side with someone. You're not necessarily guiding them because the idea is that they actually have the ability to guide themselves. The best thing about coaching is you're asking the right questions and you're supporting a person to be able to use their own experience to find the answers. Our structured program does have goal setting within it because it's a recognition that this is an area that will really support a young person to understand their needs, what they are trying to figure out about what they're trying to achieve and trying to then work towards meeting it. But other than that, it really is led by that young person, what's going on in their lives, what are the issues that they want to talk about. Whereas mentoring does assume someone knows more and is trying to use that experience to lead somebody. There are lots of times when the two work together, and there's a place for both coaching and mentoring, certainly. But our main aim is to really build those skills so that young person can, after that intensive period of working together with us, use those skills to self-reflect and then set further goals into the months that they're doing what we call a self-coaching cycle, for us then to meet together again at the end and take a look at what they've done and then help set them up for the future. So really, our aim is to really build those skills.
So for the experience of a young person might be that for a lot of their lives, people have been telling them, do this, do that. And so now they have an experience of someone walking side by side with them and actually asking them, what do you want? How would you deal with this situation? And having the belief in them that they have the skills and the knowledge really deep down inside of how to solve this problem. They may not know the mechanics of how to do it, but if they come up with the idea themselves, it gives them agency, and then with the coach they can work out actually how to do it. That gives them a sense of, gosh, I can do this. And then when you mention the outward bound of falling down and picking themselves up again and climbing that tree again or whatever, that resilience of, oh, I failed, rather than getting frustrated and walking away in a huff, someone's there to encourage, well, try again, see what happens. And again, that self-belief of, yes, I can, that's really, really powerful.
Yes, and it's foundational to me. If you are able to develop that feeling and that skill and that recognition that I can, I've done these things, therefore I can do more of these in the future, I think it really can help a person when they're faced with all sorts of challenges later in life. And there's a lot of transition that these young people are about to face or have just kind of come through and will be facing. So what we want to do is make sure that it's a sustainable skill that they can bring into their future. Apart from that, we also have a day where they work with corporate employer partners that we have, where they actually get to go to an office and see what happens there. Who are the types of people who exist in this very corporate environment, or an environment that they perceive to be corporate because it's a nice building. And actually, what we find is our employer partners, of course, have very diverse people within their teams. And that's an opportunity for those young people to be able to recognize, this is a place that I could be. It opens their horizons to opportunities that might be out there that a lot of the time they haven't necessarily seen in their home lives or backgrounds, because they may not have people who work in those places living around them or, in their communities. So it really helps them broaden that idea of what opportunities might be out there for them.
And that they can feel that they belong there. And that it ties in with what you were saying earlier about, feeling familiar with the street that you walk down, the shopkeeper. You've been into this corporate space and you go, yeah, I know what this is about. I'm not so scared of it.
Exactly. I mean, I remember myself going into one of these corporate spaces for the first time as a teacher. And it felt like I'd walked into this really quite a very expensive hotel. And I remember that feeling of, being really awkward and feeling like, oh, I'm out of place. And if I felt that way, just imagine how the students I was with felt. But once they've, kind of worked together with people who work there, we try and have group activities where they're, doing a project together, solving a problem together. It can make them feel that, oh, this is the space. It's a nice space. I'd like to work here one day. Or, oh, maybe not for me, but yeah, it's nice to see that I could have work. I could work here one day. But also the space, as say, becomes kind of less daunting. It's less awkward, because people within it have made you feel that you could be part of this.
Have you had enough of the intakes and the different years so that you can see the outcomes of, say, the first cohort, and where are they now and how has the coaching helped them?
We've just been featured in the Happy newspaper, the Happy News, and actually two of our students from some of our first cohorts, have shared their stories of where they are now. And, they attribute the confidence that they have now to their experience working on our Yes Futures program back 11, 12 years ago. So we have been able to see where some of our students end up. We do have some people who we encourage to stay in touch with us, be our ambassadors for the future. At the end of the school period, we do have data from the school about the improvements that they made within that period. So, for example, improvements to their attendance or how they're doing on a course, and most importantly, we have data about how the young people fail, and they tell us that. So at the end of their self-coaching program, we'll meet with them again and they'll tell us, how they've grown in their confidence or how they've grown in their communication skills and all the things that they were working on.
Wow, wonderful. That's so rewarding and wonderful to see practical impact in the lives of young people.
At the end of their intensive coaching time with us, the students tell us again where they moved from when they started to that point 5-6 months down the line. And in 2025, 96% of the students on the program said that they had improved their skills. But we definitely want to do more to try and get stories from our students about where they end up 10, 20 years down the line, which is where potentially, you get to really feel that you've been part of that difference to what they're doing now.
And so tell us a little bit about the coaches who volunteer to be Yes Futures coaches, and how can being a Yes Futures coach actually foster a sense of belonging within the volunteer coaching group?
Well, the thing I have to say about coaches is that the coaches are an amazing group of people. Not just Yes Futures coaches. I'm talking about kind of the coaching community, people who become coaches. I've never seen so much generosity in giving back, so much generosity with time and care. It's really beautiful. Most of our Yes Futures coaches are people who are themselves working as coaches or have recently passed a coaching qualification and they're just building their skills. What we get on our program is people who are really, really qualified and experienced in coaching, although maybe most of the time they've worked with adults in executive coaching or life coaching or kind of high-level career coaching. So what we do is we support them to learn how to work with young people, because that can be daunting as well for someone who's only worked with adults. And also there are lots of things to consider, because if someone comes to coaching as an adult, that's really been their choice and they most of the time can pay for it. Whereas the young people we work with, they themselves had never considered coaching. People working with them who thought like, hey, this could be something that would be really impactful. Potentially their parents being on board. So they come to it not knowing what to expect. So the coach would then need to kind of use different approaches. Anyway, these are the things that we support our coaches with in training, making sure that they understand any kind of safeguarding obligations, but really being the support for them to be able to do that. Coaches tell us that they feel really well supported by the organization to be able to do those things, confident, and coaches come back. So I think most of the time we have between 60 and 70% of our coaches in the cycle are people who've coached with us before. And the coaches give so many hours to the program, because if you can imagine, coaching a young person isn't just something you could do one day and like say, right, that's done. It happens with us over that period of time that I said, for 5 to 6 months. Coaches will meet with young people 4 times for coaching sessions. sessions, and then we have a welcome session. They'll meet every person on the program through kind of a speed networking activity. And some of them will also join us on some of the other activities and also kind of in the self-coaching workshop and graduations. And I'm just, as I said, amazed at the generosity that coaches bring. And one of the things you asked was, what do they get out of it? Well, actually, the coaches that I've worked with feel that they then have a bit of a community to talk to each other about the practice that they're doing, potentially about anonymized kind of what's happening with the person and getting ideas from each other. Because I think coaching can be quite lonely, excuse me, if you're working alone in a kind of your own business. There's not many opportunities to bring everyone together. And actually working for Yes Futures, because you're working kind of in a cohort base, really does help coaches get together. And, we listen to see what's needed, what people would like. And one of the things that came back from some of our research was that some coaches really would like to use our materials in their own practice and be able to have access to the things that we've developed over time. And as a response to that, we've started a license. So there's training beforehand, and then they have a license to be able to use the materials, but also our brand in their own practice, not just for young people if they find it applicable to any of the other people that they're working with. We couldn't do this without our coaches, and I'm so grateful to them. It's down to our coaches that we get the results that we get, and the young people are able to have that access to really highly qualified people who really care and help them on that journey, walking alongside them.
Wonderful. So thank you for your time. What I have really enjoyed and learnt from talking with you is that belonging, I've always thought of it from a writer's perspective, from a storyteller's perspective, but as a researcher, you've broken it down into various elements like weak ties, strong ties, temporal connection, and a connection to the place and familiarity. You pull out all the different elements, and that has been a really fascinating learning for me. So do you have any last words for our listeners?
There's a lot of weight put on this idea of belonging. I think instead of thinking about it as a very place-based thing, which can sometimes happen, or I need more people to be able to feel that I belong, we should all feel that idea of it being in ourselves, that we can develop that courage to try things. If we're able to build our ability to take some knockbacks, but then know that we can, carry on and try again. I think we can feel that belonging within ourselves. And that means that, wherever we may end up, we know that we have those skills to be able to build a community around us.
I was talking to Nafisah Graham-Brown, Deputy CEO of Yes Futures. The views expressed by my guests are entirely their own and do not necessarily reflect my views. For credits, photos, and links to some of the things we talked about, go to the show notes page on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. There are also more podcast episodes, written articles, and other bits and pieces on the main website at belongingacrosscultures.uk. If you enjoyed this episode, please do leave a review or rating or follow Belonging Across Cultures. It helps those algorithms highlight the show to more listeners. Please also tell your friends about this podcast and share a bit of belonging with more people. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram as @TigerSpiritUK and on LinkedIn as Yang-May Ooi. Thanks for listening and see you again soon.